I found my daughter-in-law in the middle of the road, mascara slick and laughing at nothing, while my son's heart monitor was still blinking in intensive care, and, before the club's baseline faded, I had already taken the first step that would cost her everything she came for. I'm glad you're here. Follow my story to the end and tell me what city you're watching from, because what started as a mother's worry turned into a reckoning. They say a pretty face can hide a hollow room. When Daniel brought Maya home, yes, Maya, with eyes like polished glass and a smile that never reached them, I saw the room before the drapes. I am Lydia, 69 years old, a grandmother and a widow who still irons her tea towels because it calms the hands. My son married the kind of beauty that glows in the first week of a honeymoon and fades under the weight of a grocery list. I kept that to myself. Mothers who speak too soon are called jealous. Mothers who wait are called naive. Pick your poison. Daniel is 34, a systems architect who climbed from intern to executive as if the rungs were moving to meet him. I watched him trade ramen for restaurant reservations, secondhand sweaters for tailored suits. When the promotion came, vice president of product at a company people write articles about, Maya photographed the champagne, not the man. Little things cooled as the title warmed. They stopped the Sunday visits. When they did arrive, Daniel always had a reason for Maya's absence: spa appointments, deadlines, brand collaborations that involved posing beside furniture she didn't own. The chair was real. The captions were not. The call from Mercy General came on a Tuesday night at 10:41 p.m. Mrs. Kovalenko, your son experienced tachycardia and near syncope. We've stabilized him. He's in observation. The nurse's voice was steady. Mine wasn't. I was in the car 10 minutes later, breath fogging the windshield, the empty passenger seat glaring at me like proof of my failure to raise a child who lets people in when it matters. The monitor in his room blinked soft green. The doctor explained that stress wraps the heart like a fist and squeezes. He would recover. He needed rest, diet changes, fewer 12-hour days lit by blue screens. Where's Maya? I asked, smoothing Daniel's hair like he was 13 again. He smiled without opening his eyes. At work. Don't bother her. I'll tell her tomorrow. I nodded because good mothers nod at the bedside and save their questions for hallways. By 1:20 a.m., the machines were humming like lullabies and I drove home the long way, past Maya's co-working office in the mill building to drop off a basket of food. The building was dark. So was her boutique gym. So was her favorite nail salon with the half-moon pedicure chairs. On impulse, I took the river road fastest way back to my small house, the one that still smells like my late husband's pipe when winter damp creeps into the wood. That's when the girl stumbled into my headlights, hair streaming, sequins flashing like fish scales. She threw up one hand to shield her face, then laughed and kept walking like the world was a runway no one had paid for. I recognized Maya by the dress before I recognized her by the face. I had paid for that dress. Just a treat, Lydia. They're running a sale, she'd said. She didn't see me until I braked hard enough to make the seatbelt bite my shoulder. When the window slid down, her expression traveled through several countries: surprise, calculation, and finally fear. Get in, I said. Now. She hesitated, eyes flicking to the pulsing doors of the nightclub behind her. Hala, block letters, bass like a ribcage someone else was knocking from the inside. Two men shouted friendly goodbyes. A tall one slung an arm around her for half a second, then saw me and disappeared back inside like smoke. Maya slid into the passenger seat, a cloud of perfume and shot glass sugar. It's not what it looks like, she murmured, voice bright with someone else's laughter. Kira's birthday. I couldn't not show my face. Daniel knows I have late events. It's work. Networking. Your husband is in intensive care, I said. He almost collapsed at his desk. Her hand stilled on the hem of her dress. For a moment I saw something like guilt. Then the glass dropped over her eyes again. He hates when I fuss. He told me not to come unless he asked. I texted a heart. I drove in silence. The car filled with small sounds, her bracelets chiming, her swallowed hiccup, the soft thud of her phone receiving messages. She didn't answer in front of me. I asked nothing else because drunks give you either too much or nothing at all, and I wanted something I could use. When we pulled into their building's garage, she reached for the door handle almost before we stopped. Maya, I said. Who is the man from the doorway? She smiled with all her teeth. A DJ. Please don't embarrass Daniel by acting provincial. The door shut. The night swallowed her dress. I sat in the driver's seat with my hands on the wheel and let the anger climb up my throat and settle where my grief used to be. Then I did what women like me always do. I went home and put on the kettle. At 3:06 a.m., while the tea steeped, I opened an old diary where I keep grocery lists and grandchildren's shoe sizes, and, when necessary, the beginning of plans. You don't make revenge when you're 69. You make order. And order, properly stacked, looks a lot like justice. I started with the obvious. Where she said she wasn't, she was. Where she said she worked, she played. Where she said she loved, she used. That meant there would be receipts. The next morning, while Daniel slept under hospital lights, I visited the bakery 2 doors down from Hala. Young people talk to grandmothers who ask for help choosing the pastries you kids like these days. The clerk, a nervous boy with a stud in his eyebrow, wrapped 2 kuinamen and told me how the DJ brought the Silver Girl croissants at midnight on Thursdays. They ate on the curb and called each other M and Nick. He laughed when he said Silver Girl and pointed at his temple. Her hair. Not gray, more like she paid for it. I bought 6 more pastries and left a generous tip. By Friday, I knew the doorman who worked the afternoon shift at their building. Maya always forgets her fob. She's charming about it. The barista who followed her on a closed social account. Her stories last night. Girl, and the florist who delivered something monthly to a name that wasn't Daniel's. The deliveries went to a street 3 neighborhoods away, a walk-up with ivy that looked picturesque if you weren't watching who entered at 11 on weekday mornings. I was. The first time I saw Maya go in, she wore gym leggings and a hoodie with the hood up. She checked the street like a bad actress checking for a director. 26 minutes later, she came out with a man about 10 years younger than Daniel, in a t-shirt, with the kind of arms that come from lifting things without thinking. He kissed her once, fast and practiced, the way people do when routine feels like safety. I didn't move. I didn't photograph. Not yet. Cameras are for the endgame. Grandmothers like me know that the early game is done with eyes and a pen and the patience to stand in your sensible shoes until patterns reveal themselves. That night, I brought Daniel chicken soup and sat beside his bed quietly while he scrolled through emails like a man trying to catch up to a train that already left the station. You can't fix this company from the hospital, I said. He half smiled. Spoken like someone who's never missed a day of work in her life. Who is Nick? I asked. His thumb paused. He looked at me slowly. What? Nothing, I lied. A name from the radio. One of those DJs. He didn't push. Good boys rarely ask questions they're afraid to hear answers to. I waited until he fell asleep and then I walked to the window where the city blinked like a miswired Christmas tree and said out loud, to a husband who would have known what to do, I am going to handle this. With both hands. On Saturday, I followed Maya to a lawyer's office. She wore the same sunglasses celebrities wear to airports and the same smile they wear to court. I didn't eavesdrop. I didn't need to. The receptionist called her by her first name and whispered, "Initial consult," into a phone. When Maya came out, she didn't walk to the garage. She walked to the street, dialed, and said, "It's happening. I'm doing it. But not until the RSU's vest in November. Even I'm not stupid enough to leave that on the table." Then she laughed, not the kind of laughter that joins the world, but the kind that pushes it away. I wrote down RSU's November in my diary. By Sunday night, my pages held neat columns, dates, times, places, names. No anger. Anger makes poor ink. I slept well. The next morning, I called an old friend from church, Katerina, who works part-time for a private investigator and full-time for Truth. Discreetly, she asked. Legally, I said. And calmly. Calm is expensive. I'll bake the walnut cake. She laughed. Then it's charity. We set to work. Justice doesn't always look like thunder. Sometimes it looks like a grandmother copying bank routing numbers off legitimate public filings and shaking hands with people half her age until they forget she's there. Our plan had three folds: evidence, timing, and shelter for my son's heart. Evidence meant documentation Maya couldn't talk pretty around. Not rumors. Not jealousy. A timeline of willful neglect and a map of deceit. Katerina started the paper trail. Photographs taken in public spaces, screenshots of public stories before they were scrubbed, receipts from businesses happy to print duplicates if you claim you left one in your other coat. I gathered the human evidence. The doorman's, she's always in a hurry. The florist's, she sent the card to with a black heart. The bakery boys, they like table 4. None of this is a court case alone, but together, the chorus hums the same tune. Timing meant we would not just blow up an affair and hope the shrapnel landed usefully. We would wait, because patience opens doors rage would kick down. November was her siren. She intended to stay until Daniel's restricted stock units vested. Then march into a lawyer's office and demand half a future she didn't build. Very well. We would speak just before that, not for cruelty, but for leverage. Shelter meant Daniel would not receive the full weight of the truth while his chest still echoed with hospital beeps. Love your child, yes. But never load him with your vengeance. I visited him daily with soup and Walker's Pace gossip. We talked about his childhood, about the winter he built a tunnel through the snow from the porch to the sidewalk and called it the safe way. I watched him put down his phone more often. I watched him sleep without his jaw clamped. The doctor approved his discharge for the following week with a plan: less caffeine, fewer boardrooms, more walks. While Daniel slept, I learned the dancer's rhythm of Hala's door. I learned that Nick was short for Nikita, a DJ who also gave production tutoring out of the Ivy walk-up. Lessons are a useful word to use when you'd like to hide a life in plain sight. I learned that Maya favored a certain corner table at a speakeasy 2 blocks over, and that someone at that bar loved taking candid photos of beautiful people being beautiful. The internet is more honest than its users. One afternoon, I carried a potted fern to Daniel's apartment under the pretense of freshening the air. The fern was real. So was the purpose. Maya's mail was on the console table, where it always sat until Daniel collected it and set it on her desk. I did not touch. I read the names I was allowed to read, the return addresses, the bold type that announces what's inside like a cheap magician: urgent, account update, policy renewal notice, appointment confirmation. I sat on the sofa and watched dust float in a ray of sun like something holy and thought about the summer I taught Daniel to tell time. By the end of that day, he could look at a clock and say 1/4 past, 1/2 past, nearly. Now my job was to teach him the same thing about his marriage. It was nearly time. Katerina's photos arrived in a small manila envelope the next morning, slid under my door as if I had ordered a miracle by mail. On top, a shot of Maya in the club doorway, hands on Nikita's chest as he leaned down to speak in the kind of closeness that eliminates the need for words. Another, Maya outside the lawyer's office, lifting her sunglasses to sign a form. Another, the Ivy Building's buzzer with Nikita's last name legible, index finger pressing down, date and time stamped. None of it indecent. All of it devastating. Are you sure you want to do this yourself? Katerina asked over the phone. Some people prefer a lawyer to break the news. I raised him, I said. I will be the one to unraise the lie. Then do not give her the chance to perform. Performers play to the last seat. I'll remove the stage. We chose a place with no audience, my kitchen, the one with the oilcloth tablecloth and the plate of oatmeal cookies that tastes like childhood. I set the envelope in a drawer. I rehearsed saying everything without shaking. When Daniel arrived on his first day out of the hospital, he looked better and worse at once. How is she? I asked, pouring tea. Busy, he said softly. Then, before the cup reached his lips, do you think she loves me, Mom? The truth paused at the edge of my tongue. I think she loves what you bring to a room, I said. But love is measured best when a room goes quiet. He looked at his hands like a boy who knows the teacher will call his name. I need you to tell me if there's something I don't see. I opened the drawer. I set the envelope on the table. I didn't add a speech because speeches make people defensive. Evidence makes them brave. He opened the first photograph and made the sound a person makes when they breathe in and forget how to stop. He looked at all of them, laid them side by side like puzzle pieces and then, with the slowness of ritual, put his palm flat on the table and said, "All right. We will go to a lawyer," I said. He nodded. "We will go today." We went to a woman named Teresa with iron gray hair and a voice like a sharp pencil. She asked questions I didn't want to hear and Daniel answered them with a steadiness I didn't know he possessed. She listened to the word RSUs like a chamber musician listens to a single violin. "If she's waiting to file until after vesting, she's told you where she thinks your weak points are," Teresa said. "That's useful. We'll strengthen them first. Close joint lines of credit. Freeze discretionary cards. Document dissipation if you can club charges, gifts. You have a prenup." "No," Daniel said. "Then we build a case for fault and waste," Teresa replied. "No guarantees, but courts dislike spouses who treat marriages like ladders." "Do we confront her now?" Daniel asked. Teresa tapped her pencil on the legal pad. "No, not until protections are in place. Let her think nothing has changed. Quiet people get more done." So we went home and did the kind of work that looks like nothing. Daniel changed passwords, moved his direct deposit to his individual account, audited every subscription that lived on autopilot in their lives. I helped by sitting beside him and threading a needle to mend a button on his coat, the kind of mothering that calms without smothering. He sent the florist an email asking for a receipt for a year of deliveries to confirm whether the account existed in his name. The receipt came to his inbox 20 minutes later with a cheerful "as requested." The account was in Maya's name, linked to a card Daniel had not known existed. Teresa called that useful. The next week we moved to the second fold, timing. Teresa suggested we invite Maya to a financial planning dinner 2 nights before vesting, the evening when she and Nikita liked to meet for lessons. Daniel would insist she attend. Teresa would be there under the cover of a consultant from his company's benefits team. We would talk long-term strategy, the kind of phrase Maya never says no to. At that dinner, with all the protections in place and a court reporter on standby to notarize any acknowledgement of plans already in motion, we would present the evidence and the papers she didn't know existed yet: notices closing lines of credit, revocation of access to certain accounts, a separation draft, and an agreement to vacate the apartment within 7 days. Teresa said if this sounded cold, good. Cold is how bridges stay standing in a storm. We set the dinner for a Thursday. On the Wednesday before, I followed Maya to the Ivy building one last time. She stood on the stoop and adjusted her hair in the glass like a girl about to step into a photograph. Nikita opened the door, pulled her in, and the last thing I saw was the flash of that dress I had paid for all those months ago. "Tomorrow," I whispered to the fern on my windowsill when I got home. "Old women talk to plants when they don't want to talk to tears. Tomorrow we stop pretending." The dinner began with candles and ended with papers. Maya arrived 22 minutes late in a silk blouse and a story about a traffic jam caused by someone else's mistake. I had set the table with care: pot roast, salad with walnuts, boiled potatoes slick with butter and dill. Teresa sat with her files neatly stacked, wearing a bland smile that said, "I'm here for numbers, not I'm here for blood." Daniel poured water into 3 glasses, his hands steady. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Of course," Maya cooed, leaning in to kiss his cheek as if the past months had never happened. "I love when we talk about our future." "Is this the consultant?" Teresa said. "Benefits and strategic planning." Maya perked up the way people do when they think a door to more opens. "Perfect. I have so many questions about vesting schedules." "Wonderful," Teresa said. "Let's start with housekeeping." She slid a paper toward Maya. "A summary of accounts and access changes effective today. These reflect Daniel's decision to separate personal and joint finances. It is standard when one spouse has medical concerns and wants to ensure continuity." Maya's spoon paused midway to her mouth. "Continuity." Teresa smiled. "Clarity. Helps everyone breathe." Maya looked at Daniel. Is this an accusation?" "No," Daniel said quietly. "This is a pause. There is something else." He nodded to me. I set the manila envelope on the table. The room changed. The air changed. Even the potatoes looked away. "What is this?" she asked, fingernails clicking against the paper. She slid out the first photograph. It was the one from Hala, her hands on Nikita's chest, her face lifted, eyes half closed like a woman being told what she wanted to hear. She didn't blink. That surprised me. She went still. Then she smiled a professional smile. "This looks like a misunderstanding." "There are ledger entries, too," Teresa said smoothly, placing a second sheet in front of her. "A year of florist charges to a separate address. Payments to an individual listed as NK Productions. Retainers to an attorney. All dated. All before Daniel's hospitalization. We're not here to shout. We're here to clarify." Maya's smile didn't crack. It dissolved. "You can't do this to me," she whispered, and in that sentence the truth arrived, to me, as if Daniel were a weather system, not a person. "We're not doing anything to you," I said, and for the first time the old iron that made me a widow who keeps the house standing came into my voice. "We're stopping what you're doing to him." Her eyes flashed. "You think you're clever because you found some pictures of me with a friend and a few deliveries? You have no idea how this works." "I do," Teresa said. "It works like this." She slid the separation agreement across. "You will vacate the apartment within 7 days. You will return all company devices and any physical keys. You will sign the acknowledgement that you have a separate residence, which is true, and that you initiated counsel for divorce prior to Daniel's hospitalization, which is also true. Given your documented spending and your extramarital relationship, we will petition the court for a disposition that favors Daniel. If you comply, we will proceed without spectacle. If you do not, we will subpoena what we're allowed and the spectacle won't be ours." Maya stared at the signature line. "You have nothing," she said, but softer, almost to herself. "We have enough," Teresa said. "Especially," Daniel said, voice low, finally breaking. "When the day I collapsed, you were at Hala." For the first time, her cheeks colored. "I was working." "Were you working?" Teresa asked mildly, "when you told someone on the phone that you were waiting for RSUs in November? Because if so, you've inadvertently given us a motive and a timeline. Courts don't love those when they look like boxes checked off on a plan to profit." The room waited. I watched the clock, 1/4 past, 1/2 past, nearly. Finally, Maya lifted the pen. "I want to speak to my lawyer." "You will," Teresa said. "Sign the acknowledgement of receipt, not agreement. You've received this. That's all we need tonight." Maya scrawled her name with the same pretty hand she used on dinner invitations. She stood, leaving most of the food untouched. "You're cruel," she said to me. "I'm old," I replied. "It reads the same if you came here for the wrong thing." She left. The door clicked. The house released a breath it had been holding for months. Daniel put his face in his hands. I stood behind him and placed my hand on his back the way I did when he was 8 and didn't make the team and thought that meant he was nothing. Teresa stacked the papers calmly. "We'll file in the morning," she said. "There's more to do. But you've done the hardest part." "No," I said. "The hardest part was watching and keeping my mouth shut until today." We all laughed the small laugh of survivors at a dinner table cleared of danger. Then I washed the dishes, because victory puts itself away when you're raised right. Revenge wants a stage. Justice prefers a ledger. In the weeks that followed, we kept our entries tidy. Maya moved to the Ivy walk-up she pretended was a studio for projects and, through her lawyer, denied everything in the reflexive way people do when they've trained their faces before mirrors. Teresa filed for dissolution citing marital misconduct and dissipation of assets. The florist sent a kindly letter acknowledging the year-long delivery account to the other address. The bakery boy gave a brief affidavit noting that M and Nick regularly shared midnight croissants. The building's security footage, a lobby camera, public, properly requested, placed Nikita and Maya together more often than either wanted to admit. No raunch. No spectacle. Just minutes with timestamps and 2 people with nowhere more respectable to be. Daniel returned to work slowly, with a doctor's letter and a spine. He put his phone in a drawer at 7 p.m. He started taking walks with me by the river. With every step, he stood taller, like the simple act of breathing without waiting for someone to notice made space inside his chest. He didn't ask about the club. He didn't ask about the man. He asked about recipes and childhood, as if he needed to remake the stories of himself without the glamour garnish she sprinkled on top to make him palatable to herself. Two things tipped the balance from fair to finished. First, Nikita, emboldened by the absence of secrecy, posted a photograph on his public account of an arm in a silk sleeve holding a champagne flute in the booth at Hala. He captioned it with a black heart and a bolt of lightning. He tagged no one. He didn't have to. People recognized the sleeve they steamed. Teresa doesn't do social media. Katerina does. She took a screenshot with the date and added it to the folder titled After Knowledge. The court called that a continuing relationship. Judges are human. They know a lightning bolt when they see one. Second, Maya, impatient with paperwork, sent Daniel a message at 1:12 a.m. on a Wednesday. I can be merciful if you are. Let's not litigate the vesting. And we both move on. Teresa read the message and almost smiled. There is your intent in writing, she said. No need to pry it out later. At the preliminary hearing, Maya wore a white suit and looked past me the way people do when they'd rather be applauded by strangers than recognized by those who know them. Teresa spoke like a person folding sheets of paper that stay folded when you put them away. She presented the receipts, the photos, the message, the timeline. Maya's lawyer argued that our documentation was invasive and vindictive. The judge, a woman with tired eyes and a wedding band that looked like it had forgotten how to shine, asked one question. Where were you when your husband was hospitalized? Working, Maya said. In a nightclub? Networking. The judge wrote something down. I see. The settlement came down 2 weeks later, crisp as winter air. Maya left with her personal belongings, a modest sum she'd independently contributed to a joint savings account, and nothing else. No share of the restricted stock. No spousal support. No claim on future bonuses. The court cited marital fault, dissipation, and pre-divorce intent to profit. Teresa called it as clean as it gets. When the decision arrived, Daniel didn't celebrate. He exhaled. He called his team to confirm he'd return to full-time the following month with boundaries that were no longer suggestions. He called his grandmother, my mother's sister in Poltava, 88 and fierce, and told her he'd come visit after the first snow. He came to my house and fixed the cabinet hinge that had been loose since spring. He held his nephew, the baby my daughter had 8 weeks earlier, and didn't cry, which is its own kind of crying if you've ever watched a man choose to stand up again. Maya texted me once. You ruined my life, she wrote. I typed and erased 3 replies. Then I sent the only one that fit in my mouth. You ruined your plan. I kept the fern. I watered it every Tuesday. I wish I could tell you Nikita learned something, but people like that prefer new openings to endings. He changed his captions to sunsets and quotes about freedom and kept using other people's music to fill rooms he didn't own. One evening, months later, I walked past Hala on my way to the river. The bass line shook the sidewalk a little. The door was propped open and a draft of laughter spilled into the street. I stood for a moment and looked in, the way you look into a window of a house you used to live in and wonder how you ever thought the rooms were enough for what you loved. For a second, I saw a woman with silver-washed hair at the bar and felt the old heat in my chest. Then she turned her head, and she wasn't Maya, and I realized how many women wear the same shade when they want to be seen from a distance. I went home and made tea. Justice isn't a headline. It's a quiet kitchen where your son eats 2 helpings, smiles for the first time with his entire face, and leaves his phone on the counter because he trusts the night to be kind. It's a drawer that closes on an envelope no one needs to open again. It's a grandmother who sleeps through until dawn because the house doesn't have to stand guard against intruders who come on high heels and call themselves wives. If you're watching this, tell me where you are in the world. Tell me if you've ever sat by a hospital bed and wondered who would show up for the person you love. Tell me if you've ever learned that you are stronger than the people who mistook your kindness for weakness. I'm 69 years old. I fold plans until they're sharp. And when the lights come on, I don't blink. Because in the end, when my son's health returned and the papers were signed, he walked away without handing his ex-wife a single penny she'd come hunting for, and I finally turned off the kettle before it boiled over. I had the affidavit in my purse, the florist on record, and the club's schedule memorized, so when Maya raised her glass on Thursday at exactly 9:17 p.m., she didn't know she'd already signed the opening line of her own exit. Stay with me. The part where I slide the knife is quiet enough to miss. Justice isn't noisy. It's a pocket calendar and a steady hand. Katerina and I built the file like bread, patiently, with a warm place to rise. She staked out the ivy walk-up. I gathered names that don't realize they're witnesses. The bakery boy, the bartender who loved candid snapshots, the doorman with a soft spot for perfume and small talk. Nobody knew everything. But each one knew a corner, and corners make a box. First, I mapped Maya's weekdays. She called them content days. I called them Tuesdays. Gym before 10, studio by 11, lunch at a place where the forks are heavier than the plates. She always posted the salad, never the timestamp. People forget the internet is a clock if you know how to read it. Then the club. Hala ran on rituals, industry night on Wednesdays, themed playlists Thursdays, a DJ rotation that put Nikita on the booth every other weekend. The hostess liked me. I tipped and asked about music from before my time. She laughed and told me the set lists anyway. Old women make the best wallpaper. At home, I sorted paper the way my late husband sorted screws. Receipts in one tin. Screenshots in another. Notes on calls in a third tin labeled mint to discourage curious hands. If you want to hide something from a thief, put it where it looks like nothing. By the time Daniel's color returned and his pulse stopped tap dancing, I had what I needed. Photographs of a woman in love with noise and a man who learned to whisper in the dead zones between lights. Nothing indecent. I never aimed for scandal. I aimed for pattern. I don't like phones at dinner, but for a week I kept mine face up like a teenager. Katerina texted me updates in a quiet code we invented at church bazaars to avoid upsetting the ladies. Plums meant photographs, aprons meant invoices, walnuts meant witness statements. On Monday, she sent 3 plums, 1 apron. On Tuesday, 2 aprons, 1 walnut, boy with eyebrow ring. On Wednesday, a whole tree. The tree was a 22-minute clip from the bakery's street camera public, posted in their window for safety, the manager said, when I asked permission to copy a slice. It caught the club's door in the corner of the frame. At 12:03 a.m., Maya stepped out, slipped into the alley with Nikita, and returned with her lipstick less precise and a receipt crammed into her fist. The timestamp was clear as a confession. She saw a camera. She thought it belonged to someone else. It did. That's the point. When the file was thick enough to slam, I brought Daniel to Teresa, iron hair, sharp pencil, the sort of woman who hits her consonants like a metronome. She didn't ask for rage. She asked for dates. Wednesdays he spins. Thursdays she networks, Teresa murmured, drawing lines. This, she tapped the clip, combined with her consultation before his hospitalization, gets you leverage. We're not chasing punishment. We're building position. How do we keep it from becoming a circus? Daniel's voice was steady, but his hands had a tremor only a mother notices. We starve it, Teresa replied. No threats. No public posts. We act like adults and let the facts be boring. Judges love boring. Boring is a luxury, I said. We'll afford it. Teresa drafted the plan like sheet music. The overture, close joint lines of credit, revoke card access, move Daniel's salary into his personal account, inventory anything easily liquidated that Maya might suddenly remember to adore. The middle movement, issue a gentle but legal request for building footage, collect confirmations from businesses, quietly freeze a boutique membership that billed Daniel's card quarterly at a rate that could fund a month of groceries. The finale, invite Maya to a benefits planning dinner 2 days before Daniel's RSUs vested, place the documents in a neutral folder that said family budget, have a notary in the next room if consent forms needed stamping. Be ready with a separation draft that didn't bluster, it simply existed. Teresa's mouth tilted. The goal isn't vengeance. It's containment. I can be both, I said. I can be a fence around my son and a mirror to her choices. Containment, Daniel repeated, as if the word itself steadied his pulse. He moved back to his apartment with a new calm. He stopped apologizing for not answering emails after 7. He ate real food. He found his own coffee mug instead of waiting for compliments. He slept. The first time I saw him doze on the sofa with a book on his chest, I felt something inside me unclench, like a room aired out for the first time in years. Maya stayed busy online. Brunches, showroom openings, a photo of her hand on a marble counter with a caption about earning your own opulence. The comments were hearts and fire and a tagline about empowerment. The internet applauds a mask if it's symmetrical. On a drizzle-gray Thursday, we set the table: pot roast, potatoes, salad with walnuts and tart apple, bread crusty enough to apologize for the week. Teresa arrived early with a portfolio in a neutral sand color. I kept the papers in a drawer next to the tea towels. A tea towel can become a tripwire if you lay it right. Maya was 22 minutes late. She breezed in with the smell of a department store and rain. Traffic was a mural of disasters, she announced, kissing the air near my cheek. Her smile was for the room, never for the people in it. Is this the financial advisor? Perfect timing. Teresa stood. Teresa. Benefits. Great. I have, 6 questions about vesting. You'll only need one, Teresa said pleasantly. Sit. Dinner tasted like reprieve until it tasted like paper. The moment Maya dipped her spoon into the dill potatoes, Teresa presented the first document. Housekeeping, she called it, a list of account changes. Maya read silently, shoulders climbing. When she reached revoked authorized user access, the muscles in her jaw did something I'd only seen when she posed for profile pictures and a photographer told her to relax. She never learned how. Is this supposed to make me feel safe? She asked. It's supposed to make the numbers honest, Teresa said. Daniel rested his hand on the table, palm down, the way he did as a boy when he was ready to hear bad news without running. We're not fighting, he said. We're clarifying. Clarifying what? Maya's smile emptied. That I can't be trusted with a credit card? That your mother is keeping score for you? No, I said. That the ledger should match the life. I laid the manila envelope on the table. The air changed. So did Maya. She didn't curse. She didn't cry. She calculated, like a person mentally subtracting taxes from a number they only wanted to add. She flipped the photos. The club doorway. The alley entrance by the bakery. The consultation directory plaque with her name and the words initial meeting. The florist invoice. The time-stamped clip still, one frame, not a movie, for mercy and for court. Her face stayed smooth until she hit the florist's note, standing order, monthly, and the address she insisted was her studio. She exhaled through her nose, a sound that would have been a laugh if there were anyone to impress. You took pictures of me eating pastries, she said. This is creepy. You made promises to a husband in a hospital bed, I said. This is cheap. Teresa didn't lean forward. She didn't lean anywhere. You have a right to counsel, she said. You also have documents to acknowledge. If you sign receipt, everyone saves time. If not, we'll serve you in the morning. Maya picked up the pen, then set it down. You can't prove what you think you can. We don't have to prove a feeling, Teresa answered. We have to prove pattern. We can. Then Daniel did something nobody scripted. He spoke to his wife without anger, like a man labeling boxes in a move. The day I collapsed, he said, I told you not to come because I couldn't stand the thought of you resenting me for it. That was my mistake. I've written my last forgiveness check for someone else's bill. Maya's eyes flicked to mine, as if I'd coached him. I hadn't. Little boys who grow into good men don't need coaches to tell the truth. They need permission. She signed the acknowledgement. Receipt, she said, voice flat. Not agreement. Receipt, Teresa agreed. And this, she slid a second paper gently across, documents that you initiated legal counsel before Daniel's hospitalization. If that's wrong, say so. Maya didn't look. It's correct, she said. I want a divorce. Then we'll do it clean, Teresa replied. You'll vacate the apartment in 7 days. You'll return keys and devices. You'll leave company property where it is. Maya smiled without showing her teeth. And the RSUs? Yours, Teresa said, are the photos you posted of yourself at a club during his hospital stay. Ours are in November. Maya's temper finally surfaced, a small, sharp splash. You think because you've stacked some paper towers you can tell me what I get to keep? No, I said, standing because old bones deserve equal height at a moment like this. The court will tell you. We simply brought it the calendar. She gathered her handbag, the one she insisted made her feel like a CEO, and left with a brisk click that tried to sound like control. The door sighed back into its frame. Daniel didn't move. Teresa stacked the documents with a tidy hand. You did well, she said softly to both of us. Now we keep it boring. Boring looked like affidavits and notarized copies and a trip to the building office where the security guard who flirted with houseplants recognized me and stamped a request for footage like it was a library book. It looked like a conversation with the florist. We adore your arrangements. Could you confirm the account holder for the monthly delivery to Elm Street? And a reply that began, of course. It looked like email threads labeled, dated, printed, slid into sleeves as if we were curating a small museum called Marital Facts. Maya moved out on a Tuesday, which I know because the doorman told me she insisted on using the service elevator and tipped with a smile rather than money. She took her perfumes, her velvet hanger army, and a coffee table book about aesthetic that weighed more than a conscience. She left a potted snake plant and a drawer full of bath salts. Daniel boxed those up and drove them to the donation center without stopping for sentiment. If I'm honest, the quiet felt strange. People talk about chaos like it's the enemy, but for months chaos had been our music, and silence takes practice. We practiced by walking after dinner and counting bridges. On the third bridge, Daniel said, I keep expecting to feel shattered. I feel empty, like a room after a party when the lights come on. He paused. It's not awful. It's called air, I said. You forgot what it smells like. 2 days later, the internet did us a small favor. Nikita posted a photo, a champagne flute tilted toward the booth at Hala. Only an arm was visible, silk sleeve, a particular cuff. He captioned it with a black heart and lightning. He didn't tag her. He didn't have to. People online love puzzles, especially when the answer flatters them. Katerina, God keep her curious, sent me the screenshot with plums for winter as the message. Teresa added it to the folder titled After Notice. When Maya's lawyer filed the first flurry of paperwork, language about amicable division and equitable share of assets including anticipated vesting, Teresa answered with the quietest, sharpest letter I've ever read. It contained 6 exhibits, numbered like verses. The bakery camera still. The florist's letter. The appointment log from the law office stamped a week before Daniel's hospitalization. The champagne screenshot after the dinner. The credit card statement with line items for NK Productions lessons. And a copy of Maya's 1:12 a.m. message to Daniel, I can be merciful if you are. Let's not litigate the vesting. Half, and we both move on. That last one did more than any speech. Greed writes more clearly than love. Depositions were scheduled. Teresa told me we wouldn't attend, Daniel would. I baked walnut cake for the night before and told him 2 things. Breathe in for 4, out for 6, and if you don't know the answer, say you don't know. He nodded like a student who finally liked the subject. At the deposition, Maya wore white and said, I don't recall, so often the court reporter's eyebrow had a workout. Teresa's questions weren't cruel. They were arithmetic. On May 12th, were you at Hala? Did you meet with counsel on June 3rd? Is the Elm Street address your residence? Were you with Mr. Nikita K on August 9th? Is this your message about vesting? Each answer narrowed the corridor until all that was left was a door marked exit. Nikita never appeared. He wasn't a party to the case. He became what men like him always become, a reference in a file and a song sample on a dance floor. When the preliminary ruling arrived, fault recognized, dissipation acknowledged, no claim to Daniel's restricted stock, no spousal support, I didn't cheer. I washed my hands at the sink and watched the water run clear. Daniel sat very still, then said, I kept waiting for a catch. There isn't one. There is, Teresa said, because she refuses romance. You have to keep living a good life. He smiled the real way, the way his face remembers from childhood photographs. That I can do. But the story doesn't end at a judge's pen. It ends on a night when I walked past Hala alone, the air thick with bass and perfume, the door open like an invitation to forget yourself, and saw a silver-haired woman at the bar. My heart jolted, habit more than hurt. Then she turned her head and she wasn't Maya, of course she wasn't, and I think that was the first moment I believed we were actually free. Freedom looks exactly like everything going on without you. I went home and put the file in the drawer with the tea towels. Then I took it back out, slid the whole stack into a new envelope, and wrote one word on it in my neat schoolteacher script: finished. If you're still with me, tell me where you're watching from and whether you've ever had to learn the difference between noise and music. The finale comes next. I promise you won't need the bass to hear it. By noon I had one email left to send. By sunset the clerk had stamped it, the judge had read it, and the door Maya planned to walk through for half of my son's future clicked shut so cleanly even Nikita didn't try the handle. If you blink, you'll miss the part where she realizes her new life costs full price. The morning after our quiet dinner turned into a ledger, we stopped feeding the story. No online replies, no hints, no victory laps. Teresa called it starving the fire. I called it housekeeping. Daniel changed the last straggler passwords and closed the boutique memberships that clung like ivy. I made soup and reminded him to breathe in for 4, out for 6, until the habit held. Maya, on the other hand, needed noise. She posted a photo of a skyline with a caption about choosing yourself even when it disappoints weak people, followed by a carousel of brunch plates nobody actually finished. Comments applauded her glow. They always do. The internet is generous with strangers. The file thickened the way bread does if you leave it under a clean towel near a warm oven. Katerina brought plums, screenshots, aprons, invoices, and walnuts, quiet witness notes, in a tote bag with daisies on it, because that's who we are, women who can carry proof and cookies at the same time. Teresa tabbed every page and wrote a table of contents that could hold up a bridge. Daniel, who used to run on adrenaline, raised his heart rate only on river walks. The hardest day wasn't court. It was the night before depositions, when Maya sent Daniel a message at 1:12 a.m. Let's be smart. Half the RSUs and we're done. You know you owe me that for the years I supported you. He stared at his phone for a long minute, set it face down, and said, I can't believe I trained myself to find this reasonable. Teresa printed the message on heavy paper. Greed, she said, circling the timestamp, does us favors. At her deposition, Maya wore horizon white and said, I don't recall, until the court reporter's left eyebrow did a little dance. Teresa never raised her voice. She didn't need to. She placed each exhibit like a stone across a stream. On June 3rd, did you meet with counsel to discuss divorce while still living with Mr. Kovalenko? Yes. On July 10th, did you set up a standing order of floral deliveries to Elm Street? Yes. Is Elm Street your residence? Yes. On May 12th, were you at Hala during Mr. Kovalenko's hospitalization? Yes. Did you send this message on September 3rd suggesting a division of Mr. Kovalenko's restricted stock units prior to vesting? Silence. Paper. Yes. It was all arithmetic. Add, subtract, carry the one. The room smelled like toner and consequence. 2 weeks later, we stood in a courtroom that looked like it had seen every human reason for regret and still opened on time. The judge's wedding band had dulled into the metal's true color. She listened, head angled just enough to suggest she could hear the honesty under the adjectives. Teresa presented the pattern, not the scandal. The bakery camera still with the timestamp. The florist's cheerful confirmation letter. The lawyer's appointment log stamped a week before the hospital call. The champagne screenshot with the silk sleeve and the little black heart after our dinner. The midnight message about half. Maya's lawyer called us punitive. The judge called us prepared. When she asked Maya where she was the night Daniel was admitted, Maya said, networking. The judge didn't sigh. She wrote. The order arrived on a Wednesday, as if the week deserved a clean middle. Marital fault recognized. Dissipation of assets noted. No claim to Daniel's restricted stock. No spousal support. Each line was a hinge that closed without squeaking. Maya left with her personal items and the portion of savings she could prove she put in herself. She left without the golden exit she'd circled on her calendar and whispered into dark booths. News like that doesn't explode. It settles. Daniel came to my kitchen, fixed the cabinet hinge that had annoyed me since spring, and ate 2 bowls of soup. He did not cry. He stacked the bowls and said, "I thought the end would be louder." I told him endings come in 2 kinds, alarms and sunsets. We got a sunset. Praise quiet. The club went on being a club. Nikita posted sunsets and quotes about living unbothered, which is what people write when their source of upgrades has closed. Maya tried a soft pivot, minimalist selfies, captions about healing. She sent me one message: "You ruined my life." I typed 6 replies and deleted 5. The one I sent said, "You ruined your plan." Revenge wasn't a billboard. It was small things that fit in a grandmother's hands. I took the silver dress I'd paid for to a consignment shop. The clerk, a girl who called me queen without irony, tucked it on a rack labeled evening and gave me 40% of the sale. I used it to buy an antique teapot with a hairline crack that only shows under certain light, proof that beauty can carry history and still pour. Daniel learned how to be a person again. He put his phone in a drawer at 7 as promised. He took his nephew to the park and didn't take photos. He returned to work with a letter from his cardiologist and a schedule that didn't pretend he was a machine. He learned to call me without apologizing for needing to hear his own mother's voice. He started going to the river by himself. Maya moved the way people move when the floor spots them, to a smaller apartment with wide windows she used as mirrors. She kept the snake plant. She kept her followers. I don't begrudge her plants or people. I begrudge harm. When Nikita's name stopped appearing beneath her photos, I didn't rejoice. I noted the pattern. Men who learn in the dark are often surprised by daylight. A month after the order, Daniel and I sat on the bench beside the bakery that gave us the angle on Hala's door, the same bench I used while my hands learned patience. The boy with the eyebrow stud brought us 2 kuanamen on the house, because this city still understands gratitude in a brown paper bag. "Silver girl doesn't come by anymore," he said, shrugging. It got boring. Boring. The prize Teresa promised. The life I wanted for my son. There was one last thread to pull, and I pulled it because untidy endings itch. Maya still had Daniel's name attached to a household management app she used to book cleaners and deliveries. The invoices landed in a shared folder like snow. Teresa had already removed any obligations, but the name felt like a breadcrumb she could pretend meant company. I wrote customer support the email I'd been saving. "Please remove Mr. Kovalenko's profile from this account. He is no longer a member of the household." 2 minutes later, done. It was a small word. It was also the last word. On the Sunday that would have been their 3rd anniversary, Daniel brought coffee to my kitchen and we made buckwheat pancakes. He asked if I wanted to drive by the river after breakfast. I told him I wanted to hear about his first week back at full-time. He told me about a junior engineer who reminded him of himself at 23 and a new rule in his department. Nobody sends email after 9 unless a server is literally on fire. We laughed, which is also a rule. If you want a ribbon tied around the story, here. A nurse from the cardiac floor waved at Daniel on the river path a few weeks later. They talked about nothing for 30 minutes and exchanged nothing more than first names. The world is patient when you are. I didn't push. I am old. I have learned the difference between armchair romance and the kind you can carry through a grocery store. As for me, I stopped standing guard. I walked past Hala sometimes and didn't look in. I watered the fern every Tuesday. I folded the tea towels and put the manila envelope back in the drawer, underneath them, exactly where common sense lives. When neighbors asked about Maya, I said what was true and nothing else. They divorced. He's well. The most expensive thing in this life is a lie you tell yourself until it spills over and stains everyone else's floor. Maya paid her bill. Daniel paid his. He paid in time and worry and the quiet of a hospital room he didn't deserve to learn in. I paid mine by doing what women like me always do, watching, waiting, and, when the moment arrived, folding the plan until it was sharp. If you've stayed with me to the end, tell me your city and whether you've ever traded noise for peace. Tell me if you've ever chosen the boring answer and discovered it was the one that saved your life. Here is the part people want me to repeat, the line they circle with a finger like it's a charm. Once my son's health returned and we placed the facts in order, he hired the right lawyer. He walked into the courtroom with a pulse that belonged only to him. And he walked out without giving his ex-wife a single penny she came for. That's not revenge on a billboard. That's justice at a kitchen table.
My grandmother told me this story. Thanks for watching this video. Bye bye!